Vivek Ramaswamy expresses deep concern about what he sees as authoritarian tendencies in the Biden administration. He points to Jack Smith's move to subpoena all retweets of Donald Trump's 2020 posts as a major worry. Ramaswamy goes further, accusing Nikki Haley of supporting an ID system aimed at these individuals, claiming her stance is closer to fascism than the current Biden administration's policies. Don't miss. What are the key actions highlighted as evidence of a drift towards fascism under Biden's administration? How does Vivek Ramaswamy perceive Nikki Haley's approach to societal warnings, and what concerns does he raise regarding her actions? Why does Ramaswamy emphasize the dangers of misinterpretation? Using George Orwell's books as an example?
Wait. I didn't write that book, Ron, and the irony is Nikki Haley was heaping praise on me when I wrote that book, but now I worry.
Nikki Haley was heaping praise on me when I wrote that book. Nikki Haley's endorsement of Vivek Ramaswamy's book triggers a shift in focus, perspective, and political alignment.
I was warning about the woke industrial complex in this.
Warning about the woke industrial complex. Vivek Ramaswamy's book provides a cautionary critique of the woke industrial complex, presenting a thorough analysis of progressive ideology.
Country as a warning. Apparently, she read it as a how-to manual, just like she reads George Orwell's books as well. And so I think that that's actually far more dangerous than, this is really important for people to understand. We're marching towards fascism under Biden.
Marching towards fascism under Biden. Vivek Ramaswamy critiques the Biden administration, contending that it is leaning towards fascism. He explores various government actions and policies to support his assertion.
Jack Smith has subpoenaed every last retweet that someone has issued from Donald Trump.
Jack Smith has subpoenaed every last retweet that someone has issued from Donald Trump. Numerous instances highlight government interventions, characterized by subpoenas and the looming threat to freedom of expression, sparking concerns of potential infringement.
In the year 2020, the only person more fascist than the Biden regime now is Nikki Haley, who thinks the government should identify every one of those individuals with an ID.
Nikki Haley, who thinks the government should identify every one of those individuals with an ID. Highlighting Nikki Haley's position, it is essential to emphasize her dedication to preserving the authority of individual governing bodies. She navigates the intricate balance between security measures and the oversight of privacy and personal freedoms.
That is not freedom, that is fascism, and she should come nowhere near the levers of power, let alone the White House.
That is not freedom. That is fascism, and she should come nowhere near the levers of power, let alone the White House. While scrutinizing Nikki Haley's position, Vivek Ramaswamy strongly contends an incongruity between her stance and the fundamental tenet of liberty. He warns against the potential of her rise to influence, emphasizing the importance of resisting such a trajectory. Ramaswamy's sharp critique highlights the apprehensions within certain conservative circles regarding the risk of excessive government control and the gradual erosion of fundamental civil liberties under the present administration. His remarks stand as a clear cautionary tale, signaling what he views as alarming authoritarian inclinations and urging a vigilant stance to safeguard individual freedoms. Vivek Ramaswamy's forceful rhetoric sparks a heated debate, lashing out against fascism and vehemently rejecting Nikki Haley's proposal. This sparks concerns about its potential divisive repercussions. The statement delves into worries about excessive governmental involvement, proposing the identification of individuals behind social media accounts. This action could be seen as a violation of personal freedoms, casting a shadow on the freedom to express oneself. It touches upon the essence of personal freedom and authenticity, highlighting the dangers of being perceived as a threat to individual expression. Moreover, it stresses the crucial need to maintain the liberty to voice opinions without the looming fear of government scrutiny or interference. The critique and heightened public awareness, encapsulated as marching towards fascism, labeling individuals as fascists, raise concerns about their potential psychological impacts and the emotional uproar triggered by the strong denouncement.
What do you think?
In a recent discourse, Nikki Haley champions the need for social media companies to combat online bots, but refutes any support for government-mandated identification. However, Vivek Ramaswamy counters her stance, affirming that she did, in fact, propose the necessity of requiring government ID for social media usage. Ron DeSantis aligns with Ramaswamy's assertion, citing instances where Haley purportedly indicated her intentions to mandate the disclosure of individuals' identities on social platforms. Don't miss what were Nikki Haley's statements regarding anonymity on social media. How did Vivek Ramaswamy and Ron DeSantis interpret Haley's proposal? What historical example was used to contextualize the debate around anonymous speech?
We do not need freedom of speech for Russians and Iranians and Hamas.
We do not need freedom of speech for Russians and Iranians and Hamas. The primary focus should not center on enhancing freedom of expression for individuals or organizations within a particular nation, and it should not be perceived as a priority for national interests.
We need social media companies to go and fight back on all of these bots.
We need social media companies to go and fight back on all of these bots. In response to concerns about election security and online manipulation, social media companies actively work to prevent the spread of misinformation and foreign interference.
That are happening. That's what I said. As a mom, do I think that social media would be more civil if we went and had people's names next to that?
Social media would be more civil if we went and had people's names next to that. Nikki Haley suggests linking individuals' names to their posts as a potential solution to tackle cyberbullying and online misconduct. The objective is to promote civility in the realm of social media.
Yes, I do think that, because I think we've got too much cyberbullying. I think we've got child pornography and all of those things. But having said that, I never said government should go and require anyone's name.
She never said government should go and require anyone's name. Nikki Haley has rejected any support for the government's mandatory disclosure of identification, offering a clear statement to explain her position.
She said, I want your name.
She
as President of the United States, her first day in office, she said, one of the first things I'm going to do.
I said we were going to get the millions of bots.
She wants government ID to dox every American.
She wants government ID to not say you're American. Ron DeSantis highlighted that Nikki Haley suggested using government identification to verify the source of posts. This could be seen as a potential threat to the principles of anonymity and privacy.
That's what she said. You can roll the tape. She said, I want your name. And that was going to be one of the first things she did in office. And then she got real serious blowback, and understandably so, because it'd be a massive expansion of government. We have anonymous speech. The Federalist Papers were written with anonymous writers.
Massive expansion of government. We have anonymous speech. The Federalist Papers were written under Publius. The importance of anonymous speech in American history is emphasized, especially in resistance to the possible expansion of government control. Historical examples like the Federalist Papers stand as poignant instances of this opposition.
Jay, Madison, and Hamilton, they went under Publius. It's something that's important, and especially given how conservatives have been attacked and they've lost jobs and they've been canceled. You know the regime would use that to weaponize that against our own people.
Okay,
it was a bad idea, and she should own up to it.
She should own up to it. Nikki Haley suggests taking responsibility for her past statements and acknowledges the potential repercussions and significance associated with her position. DeSantis and Ramaswamy are taking a stand against Haley's position, accusing her of supporting the exposure of users' identities on the internet. They argue that such a stance goes against the right to speak anonymously and could result in consequences reminiscent of historical figures like the authors of the Federalist Papers, who used fake names and faced severe criticism. This discussion highlights a broader argument about online anonymity and the boundaries of government involvement in social media. In considering forms of expression, the significance of anonymous speech stands out prominently, as seen in historical instances like the Federalist Papers. Anonymity therein facilitated open and critical discourse, free from concerns regarding potential backlash. Addressing discussions surrounding ID requisites in online speech warrants caution against broadening governmental oversight. This raises alarms about potential state intrusion into safeguarding personal information, rights, and expression. At its core, the human need for genuine self-expression finds an avenue in anonymity, enabling individuals to voice opinions without undue influence or prejudgment based on identity. It delves into the intricate facets of cyberbullying, the behavioral effects of anonymity, and the delicate balance between free expression and the digital landscape inhabited by citizens.
What do you think?
Vivek Ramaswamy brings attention to an intriguing aspect involving Joe Biden and Nikki Haley. Despite their vocal support for military intervention in eastern Ukraine, Ramaswamy highlights their inability to name 3 provinces within that region. He emphasizes the importance of foreign policy wisdom beyond mere experience and asserts his early advocacy for a sensible peace agreement in Ukraine. Ramaswamy criticizes Biden and Haley for perpetuating what he deems a fruitless conflict, challenging the conventional belief that experience guarantees effective decision-making in foreign policy. His assertion of a fundamental knowledge deficit in their understanding of the proposed intervention raises doubts about their qualifications. Don't miss. What's the main critique Ramaswamy has about Joe Biden and Nikki Haley concerning Ukraine? Why does Ramaswamy emphasize the difference between foreign policy experience and wisdom? What stance has gained support among neocons regarding Ukraine? And who opposes it?
I want to say one thing about the tie to Ukraine, if I may. So foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom.
Foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. Examining the difference between mere familiarity with foreign policy roles and possessing genuine wisdom in navigating complex international issues invites scrutiny, drawing parallels to the evaluations of figures such as Nikki Haley and Joe Biden.
I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine.
I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. By positioning himself as an early advocate for a peaceful resolution in Ukraine, Vivek Ramaswamy has established his standing as a luminary in foreign policy discernment, setting himself apart from those who support what he considers a pointless war.
Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine.
Nikki Haley and Joe Biden still support this pointless war in Ukraine. In his critique of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, Vivek Ramaswamy sees their position on the Ukraine conflict as unjustified and divergent from a rational approach.
And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are.
She has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are. Nikki Haley describes this individual as lacking knowledge about specific regions of Ukraine, asserting unfamiliarity with the intricacies of the conflict they endorse.
But she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience.
Reject this myth that somebody with a cup of coffee stint at the UN has real foreign policy experience. Questioning Haley's qualifications, some may perceive her brief tenure at the UN as an insufficient foundation for claiming substantial expertise in foreign policy.
It takes an outsider to see this through.
It takes an outsider to see this through. Outsiders like Vivek Ramaswamy suggest that individuals with established political careers, deeply rooted in specific perspectives, may lack fresh viewpoints on foreign policy matters.
Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces.
Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces. Emphasizing Ramaswamy's portrayal of Nikki Haley, the focus is on her visual image, characterized by a perceived lack of deep understanding of the geopolitical intricacies associated with the conflict in Ukraine.
That she wants to actually fight for. And there's her puppet masters right there. The donors right there that are playing her like the puppet master.
Hold on.
Puppet members, donors playing her like the puppet master. The suggestion is made that Nikki Haley might be subject to influence or control from external forces, with insinuations that her decisions are shaped by influential donors rather than stemming from independent judgment. Ramaswamy accentuates the distinction between foreign policy experience and authentic sagacity, casting doubt on the preparedness of political figures like Biden and Haley to make well-informed decisions regarding military intervention in Ukraine. He critiques their endorsement of the conflict, while highlighting his earlier stance, advocating for a more reasoned approach. This frames their positions as ill-informed and potentially perilous, given their lack of understanding about the specific regions they propose deploying troops to. In delving into the realm of foreign policy, it becomes imperative to distinguish between the facets of experience and wisdom. The essence lies not merely in accumulating experience or assuming a role, but in possessing profound insights and sagacity regarding foreign policy. It underscores the folly of advocating military intervention devoid of a nuanced understanding of the ground reality, the attendant risks, and the moral obligation entailed in deploying troops to conflict zones. Authenticity assumes paramount significance in championing military action. Leaders bear a moral responsibility to cultivate a deep comprehension of regions where military involvement is proposed. The ethical quandaries surrounding actions advocated without such understanding loom large. Scrutinizing the psychological ramifications of allegations, it prompts an examination of the efficacy of personal attacks in political discourse. Consideration is given to how such statements might sway public perception, erode trust in leadership, and influence the overall tenor of political debates.
What do you think?
Vivek Ramaswamy critically evaluates Chris Christie's foreign policy acumen, specifically highlighting his lack of awareness regarding eastern Ukrainian provinces. Ramaswamy asserts that politicians advocating for military intervention, including Christie and Nikki Haley, must possess in-depth knowledge of the regions involved. He condemns their purported foreign policy expertise as deceptive, drawing parallels to historical instances where leaders' misinformation led to military involvement and significant consequences in Iraq and Afghanistan. Ramaswamy argues that figures like Cheney represent a neoconservatism bordering on fascism, despite attempts to present themselves differently. Don't miss. How does Vivek Ramaswamy criticize Chris Christie and Nikki in the context of foreign policy? What examples does Ramaswamy provide to support his claims about misleading information? What is the central theme of Ramaswamy's critique regarding political ideologies and conflicts?
So first of all, I think we just learned something from Chris Christie. We learned three things. We learned three things right there. First of all, Chris Christie also doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants us to fight for.
Chris Christie doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants us to fight for. Questions. Chris Christie's understanding of specific elements concerning eastern Ukraine and points out a potential weakness in his grasp of foreign policy.
Chris, your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York.
Yeah. Your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York. Critics of Chris Christie expressed disapproval of his past actions, marked by scornful remarks, suggesting a lack of substantial experience in the realm of international affairs.
So do everybody a favor, just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal, and get the hell out of this race. When it comes to Nikki, I think if you're going to actually send your sons and daughters to go die in somebody else's war,
if you're going to send your sons and daughters to go die in somebody else's war, you better. Leaders advocating for military intervention should demonstrate a deep understanding of the conflict. However, both Chris Christie and Nikki Haley seem to lack this crucial comprehension according to critics.
Excuse me, Chris, I'm speaking, and I'm not done yet.
I haven't heard a time when you aren't
and we're going to be done. So listen up to this. If these people want to send your sons and daughters to go die in Ukraine, they've been arguing for it for a year. $200 billion of our taxpayer money sent over. Neither of them could even name for you the provinces that they actually want to protect.
Neither of them could even name for you the provinces that they actually want to protect. Chris Christie and Nikki Haley appear incapable of specifying the exact region they intend to protect in Ukraine, lacking essential details about the situation, as per critics.
And this is the people who have been touting their so-called foreign policy experience. It is intellectual fraud. These people are lying to you.
Intellectual fraud, lying to you. Critics suggest that the assertive language and qualifications put forth by Chris Christie and Nikki Haley regarding their foreign policy experience may be deceptive and potentially fraudulent.
The same people who told you about weapons and mass destruction in Iraq to justify that invasion didn't know the first thing about it, yet they sent thousands of our sons and daughters to go die.
The same people who told you about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq sent thousands of our sons and daughters to go die. The credibility of foreign policy decisions made by figures like Chris Christie and Nikki Haley is questioned, with concerns raised about potential misinformation, particularly regarding weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
The same people who told you the same in Afghanistan, where the Taliban is still in charge 20 years later. $7 trillion of our national debt due to these toxic neocons.
$7 trillion of our national debt due to these toxic neocons. Vivek Ramaswamy's characterization of linking criticism with broader issues such as the national debt, labeling it as toxic neocons, holds significant implications.
You can put lipstick on a Dick Cheney, it is still a fascist neocon.
You can put lipstick on a Dick Cheney, it is still a fascist neocon. Using a metaphorical reference to Dick Cheney's name allows for criticism of individuals, suggesting that their core ideology remains unchanged.
Thank you,
you
Mr.
see that
Ramaswamy.
today.
Thank you,
It's
Mr.
Dick
Ramaswamy.
Cheney all over again in this party.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
Ramaswamy confronts the credibility of politicians like Chris Christie and Nikki Haley, emphasizing their limited grasp of the areas they propose sending troops to. He connects their claimed expertise in foreign policy to previous instances of spreading misinformation and disastrous military interventions. His conclusion draws a striking comparison between their perceived lack of comprehension and the historical ramifications of such misleading actions, likening their suggested policies to those reminiscent of fascist neoconservatism. Politicians often face criticism for their lack of in-depth knowledge about the areas they support military intervention in. This raises concerns about making informed decisions regarding war and foreign policy. There's a poignant question about the ethical responsibility of leaders who advocate for sending their own children to the battlefield, highlighting the moral quandary of endorsing military action without a comprehensive understanding of its implications. Authenticity and accountability are imperative in such decision-making processes. The use of aggressive and confrontational language in political debates has a significant psychological impact, polarizing opinions and eroding public trust in politicians. Historical parallels, drawing comparisons from past conflicts and policy blunders, serve as cautionary tales. Delicate discussions are essential in foreign policy, particularly when considering their implications on national debt and global stability derived from past policy decisions.
What do you think?
I promote myself and my videos. Hello, I'm Bong Sim, a Canadian resident of Asian descent. During the day, I work as a professional counselor, and at night, I do Uber food delivery. Instead of speaking in my videos, I prefer to express myself through writing. In today's world, speaking the truth can have serious consequences, both for my professional life and personal well-being. That's why I'm choosing to pen down my thoughts and using a platform to share them on my behalf. Some people find my videos uninteresting, too strict, and they even criticize the appearance of the individuals featured, including their tiredness, Asian, or perceived flaws. I understand these concerns, but I genuinely believe in the purpose behind creating these videos, Unfortunately, recent Canadian legislation has resulted in the censorship of free speech and online content. And although Google hasn't explicitly admitted their involvement, I suspect they play a part in it. Despite my efforts to monetize my content on YouTube, I haven't been able to earn any income from it. I've tried 3 times, and all my attempts were rejected. They turned me down for reasons like lacking creativity, not having a recognizable face, or not having a distinct voice. Nevertheless, I've made several adjustments to my videos, hoping to overcome these challenges. If you share my belief and support what I'm doing, I would genuinely appreciate your backing. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis strongly advocates strict immigration restrictions, emphasizing the importance of avoiding individuals from cultures perceived as adversarial. Drawing attention to Europe, he highlights a rise in anti-Semitic incidents and cultural clashes due to extensive migration. DeSantis criticizes Nikki Haley's support for unrestricted legal immigration, firmly asserting the necessity of imposing immigration constraints to prevent the influx of individuals from cultures considered antagonistic. Specifically, he expresses concern about anti-Semitism and cultural discord, citing Gaza as a region of worry. DeSantis underscores the critical need for strategic immigration measures to safeguard American values and prevent challenges faced by Europe. Don't miss. What specific cultural issues does DeSantis reference in Europe due to mass migration? What stance does DeSantis take on the role of corporate CEOs in setting immigration policy? Why does DeSantis mention the Gaza Strip in the context of immigration?
It's not just terrorism, though. That's important. But look what's happened in Europe. You have more anti-Semitism in Germany than at any time since Adolf Hitler.
More anti-Semitism in Germany than at any time since Adolf Hitler. Concerns are rising regarding the escalating anti-Semitism in Germany, attributed to the influx of a significant number of individuals whose motivations are believed to derive from a rejection of German culture.
Why? Because they imported mass numbers of people who reject their culture. Europe is committing suicide with the mass migration.
Europe is committing suicide with mass migration, characterizing the significant migration in Europe as self-destructive behavior. The population surge is perceived as detrimental to the continent.
And it's illegal and legal. Nikki Haley said the other day there should be no limits on legal immigration.
Nikki Haley said there should be no limits on legal immigration. Ron DeSantis highlighted a policy misalignment, citing disagreement with Nikki Haley's stance on legal immigration.
That corporate CEOs should set the policy on that.
Corporate CEOs should set the policy on that. Expressing reservations about entrusting corporate CEOs with the authority to determine immigration policies. The preference is for controlled or government-regulated approaches.
There needs to be limits on immigration.
There needs to be limits on immigration. Advocating for immigration restrictions. Emphasizing the belief that unrestricted immigration poses challenges.
And we should not be importing people from cultures that are hostile.
Importing people from cultures that are hostile. We endorse selective immigration arguments rooted in cultural considerations, acknowledging the potential challenges associated with integrating individuals from specific cultures.
So, for example, I said with the Gaza, you had some of the squad wanted to import 300,000 people from the Gaza Strip.
Squad wanted to import 300,000 people from the Gaza Strip, spotlighting specific policy suggestions from members of the squad, progressive lawmakers, and expressing disagreement with the idea of admitting significant numbers of individuals from Gaza, citing concerns about anti-Semitism and potential cultural discord.
I said, no, we're not taking anyone from Gaza because of the anti-Semitism and because they reject American culture. So we've got to get smart about this. We cannot let the United States be like Europe.
We cannot let the United States be like Europe. Highlighting the adverse impacts of widespread migration in Europe, the proposal suggests that the United States should chart a different course. DeSantis highlights the criticality of managed immigration, expressing worry regarding the influx of individuals from cultures deemed adversarial. He references instances in Europe where large-scale migration purportedly sparked heightened anti-Semitic sentiments and cultural clashes. He stresses the significance of rational immigration strategies that uphold American principles and societal unity, while advising against replicating the perceived immigration difficulties witnessed in Europe. Preserving cultural identity and values, while emphasizing the need for immigration policies that foster integration and shared societal values, is essential. However, welcoming individuals from cultures perceived as incompatible with the host country's values can generate social discord and integration challenges. Concerns arise regarding potential cultural conflicts stemming from mass migration, impacting the psychological well-being of immigrants and indigenous communities. It's crucial to prioritize promoting understanding and unity rather than division. Policies focusing on national security are vital to safeguard a country's cultural integrity, ensuring stability and societal welfare. Immigration policies significantly influence the sense of belonging, identity, and social cohesion for both immigrants and indigenous groups, directly impacting their inclusion in society.
What do you think?
Vivek Ramaswamy engages in a heated debate, calling out Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie for their past alignment with Donald Trump, implying it was driven by personal gain. He redirects focus to what he sees as the true adversary, the deep state, challenged by Trump. Ramaswamy questions the authenticity of January 6th, hinting at an inside job, and challenges the government's alleged concealment of Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11. Addressing sensitive topics like the Great Replacement Theory, the 2020 election, and Trump-Russia collusion, he positions himself as a truth advocate amid perceived opportunistic politics. Don't miss. What are the key points Vivek Ramaswamy is emphasizing in his discourse? How does Ramaswamy critique the relationship between politicians and Donald Trump? What is the central message Ramaswamy conveys about challenging established powers?
Here's my issue with all three of my other colleagues on this debate stage, is all three of them have been licking Donald Trump's boots for years for money and endorsements.
Licking Donald Trump's boots for years for money and endorsements. Vivek Ramaswamy suggests that politicians like Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie might have prioritized personal gain over principles in their association with Donald Trump. This highlights the contrast between authenticity and the common influence of financial interests on politicians.
Ron DeSantis, you've been a great governor, but you would have never been one without actually begging Donald Trump for that endorsement.
And you attacked him in your
Nikki
book
Haley.
a year ago.
Same thing with Chris Christie as a lobbyist, begging them for COVID money for his special interests in New Jersey, prepping him for the debates last time around. These people are now Monday morning quarterbacking some decision he made. I think the real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the deep state.
The real enemy is the deep state. Vivek Ramaswamy is critical of entrenched bureaucracy, which he terms the deep state, expressing skepticism about its alignment with the people's interests. He empathized with proponents of limited government, recognizing their desire to curb bureaucratic power and their inherent distrust of it.
That at least Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job?
January 6th does look like it was an inside job. Vivek Ramaswamy's suggestion that the events on January 6th may be tied to an internal factor presents a skeptical questioning of the official narrative surrounding that specific day.
That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11.
The government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11. Amidst the prevalent distrust of government agencies, there is a growing tendency to question official narratives and empathize with those skeptical individuals. This overarching viewpoint supports an atmosphere where challenging official explanations is not just reasonable, but also demonstrates a sincere acknowledgement of people's apprehensions.
that the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform.
The Great Replacement theory is not a conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform. Vivek Ramaswamy, in advocating for alignment with the Democratic platform, crafts a thorough narrative on the immigration issue. He asserts that Democratic policies, within this context, effectively align with and support the principles of this perspective.
That the 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech.
The 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech. The focus shifts to election integrity, with particular attention to the risk of manipulation through extensive technology and information channels.
That the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment that actually put up the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that they knew was false.
The Trump-Russia collusion hoax, Vivek Ramaswamy alleges that the National Security Agency, NSA, endeavored to subvert Donald Trump by promoting Russian conspiracy narratives. According to Ramaswamy, Trump encountered unjust resistance from within the government.
There's a reason why I'm the only person on the stage who can say these things. That's what it's going to take, not people who are licking his boots one time and now Monday morning quarterbacking him and criticizing him when it's convenient.
In the arena of debate, Ramaswamy fearlessly confronts his adversaries, emphasizing his unique perspective as the sole individual daring to openly question the government's portrayal of January 6th and the purported truce concealed within Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11. He casts allegations against his fellow contenders, accusing them of previously aligning themselves with Trump merely for personal advancement. Additionally, he censures them for supposedly altering their positions, conveniently. As circumstances shift, Ramaswamy crafts his image as a candidate unafraid to broach contentious subjects, vowing to express his views forthrightly and challenge the established narratives entrenched in politics. Challenging prevailing narratives encompasses events like the January 6th incident, the official discourse on the government's handling of information concerning Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11, public faith, transparency in governance, and the potential psychological impact of contradictory information on an individual's perception of authority. Criticisms arise regarding alignment with or reliance on Donald Trump for support or financial backing, the genuineness of political stances, and the adjustment of politicians' positions for personal gain or political advantage. Mentions of the deep state and calls for truthfulness stem from trust issues in the system. Skepticism towards the existing power hierarchy and government deceit affecting public trust and social harmony. Allusions to diverse theories like the Great Replacement theory and allegations of fraudulent elections reflect societal division, and the role of politicians in perpetuating or contesting these theories.
What do you think?
Vivek Ramaswamy clarifies his remarks on Ambassador Nikki Haley's faith, emphasizing that he questions her authenticity rather than challenging her religious beliefs. He criticizes identity politics, labeling it as divisive and contrary to American ideals, asserting it as a problem embraced by both political factions. Ramaswamy points out instances where he believes Haley has utilized identity politics in her campaign, particularly focusing on gender and her response to criticisms. Accusing her of exploiting identity politics and being influenced by powerful donors, he strongly opposes its integration into the Republican Party. Ramaswamy reiterates that his critique of Haley is not rooted in gender bias, but rather in his perception of her questionable conduct and use of identity-centric strategies. Don't miss. How does Vivek Ramaswamy critique Nikki Haley's political approach? What does Ramaswamy emphasize regarding identity politics? What is the central issue Ramaswamy raises concerning political authenticity?
Mr. Ramaswamy, when discussing your Hindu faith in September, you seemed to take a shot at Ambassador Haley, who is also Indian American and who converted to Christianity as an adult. You said, an easy thing for me to do, being a politician, is to shorten my name, profess to be a Christian, and then run. Make Vivek Vicky or whatever, end quote. Are you questioning Nikki Haley's Christian convictions? And why has your campaign made a point of referring to Ambassador Haley by her given first name, Nimarata, even though she has gone by Nikki for her whole life?
Well, my whole deal is if Nikki Haley, of all people, should know how to pronounce my name correctly, the rest of the news media can learn it. My deal is I'll call her Nikki when she can say my own name right. That's our little fun side bet there. Here's what I will say is deeper. I don't question her faith, but I question her authenticity.
I don't question her faith, but I question her authenticity. Vivek Ramaswamy's distinction between faith and authenticity serves as a critique of political opportunism, highlighting the crucial role of public figures' integrity. The concept emphasizes that some individuals may assume certain identities for political advantage.
And I think that's deeper here. We were just talking about the trans issue. This is a symptom of a deeper cancer in American life, identity politics. This new religion that says your race, your gender, and your sexuality are your identity. It is anti-American. It is meritocratic, it's anti-meritocratic, and it is dividing this country.
Identity politics is anti-American, anti-meritocratic, and dividing the country. Promote national unity by steering clear of divisive identity politics and celebrating individual strengths. Embrace a shared national identity, rejecting the disruptive influence of identity politics as a threat to the fundamental principles of a meritocratic society.
To a breaking point. And I've spoken about this to the left. My books are all about this. I've preached this to the left, but it's even worse when Republicans try to play the same game. We're talking about that trans issue. And Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad.
Nikki Haley's campaign launch sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Lighted. Vivek Ramaswamy uses the term woke in critiquing progressive language and values, implying a connection between him and the liberal figure. This connection suggests that Nikki Haley is aligning herself with left-wing rhetoric.
Talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done.
She said that only a woman can get this job done. Vivek Ramaswamy emphasizes Nikki Haley's statements on gender, interpreting it as a critique of his position against identity-based assertions about political qualifications. According to Ramaswamy, such claims may be seen as pandering to specific identity groups.
That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party, and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house.
This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house. Cautious about the consequences of military intervention, Vivek Ramaswamy disapproves of Nikki Haley's involvement in international affairs and remains skeptical about politicians using military actions for personal gain.
This is the problem. Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud.
Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud. Vivek Ramaswamy describes Nikki Haley's skillful use of identity politics as a form of intellectual dishonesty, underscoring the significance of authenticity and emphasizing the manipulation involved in deploying identity politics.
And it actually needs to end. There's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight. This is how this game is played. The puppet masters put up their puppet, and I reject the use of identity politics in this party.
I reject the use of identity politics in this party. The outright rejection of identity politics signifies a dedication to individualism and a refusal to be categorized based on group affiliations. There is apprehension about the infiltration of identity politics within the Republican Party.
It has been a cancer coming from the left, and I'm sick and tired of the double standards. The people of this country are too. Having 2 X chromosomes does not immunize you from criticism.
Thank you, sir.
Ramaswamy maintains a resolute position against the application of identity politics, denouncing its utilization across political spectrums, including within Haley's campaign strategies. He steers his critique away from gender-focused discussions, affirming his focal point on Haley's actions and decisions, alleging her utilization of identity politics and susceptibility to donor influence. Ramaswamy presents himself as actively contesting the adoption of identity politics within the Republican Party, underscoring that critiques should remain unbiased, regardless of gender considerations. The critique aimed at identity politics questions the very essence of segregating identity into mere aspects of race, gender, or sexuality. It urges a shift towards appraising individuals based on their conduct, character, and achievements, rather than solely relying on identity markers. Delving into the authenticity inherent in political ideologies, it involves dissecting the repercussions of challenging one's genuineness and motivations in the political realm. It underscores the significance of genuine intentions and moral conduct in public positions. This discussion potentially stems from the psychological impact of accusations against public figures, the societal consciousness, trust in leadership, and identity-driven language affecting political conversations and societal divides. A stance advocating the dismissal of identity politics in assessing political contenders emerges. The call is to scrutinize politicians based on their policies, attributes, and personas, rather than fixating on identity indicators.
What do you think?
I promote myself and my videos. Hello, I'm Bong Sim, a Canadian resident of Asian descent. During the day, I work as a professional counselor, and at night, I do Uber food delivery. Instead of speaking in my videos, I prefer to express myself through writing. In today's world, speaking the truth can have serious consequences, both for my professional life and personal well-being. That's why I'm choosing to pen down my thoughts and using a platform to share them on my behalf. Some people find my videos uninteresting, too strict, and they even criticize the appearance of the individuals featured, including their tiredness, Asian, or perceived flaws. I understand these concerns, but I genuinely believe in the purpose behind creating these videos. Unfortunately, recent Canadian legislation has resulted in the censorship of free speech and online content, and although Google hasn't explicitly admitted their involvement, I suspect they play a part in it. Despite my efforts to monetize my content on YouTube, I haven't been able to earn any income from it. I've tried 3 times, and all my attempts were rejected. They turned me down for reasons like lacking creativity, not having a recognizable face, or not having a distinct voice. Nevertheless, I've made several adjustments to my videos, hoping to overcome these challenges. If you share my belief and support what I'm doing, I would genuinely appreciate your backing.